trending on social media yesterday about, and most of them on posts about the frustration of young Malaysians about the behaviour of the older elected representatives in Dewan Rakyat. Now, many of the comments talked of empowering and voting in young leaders as the new generation of lawmakers. So comparisons were made to the recent Parliament Digital Youth Initiative, which had, I must say, much better behaved participants. Don't you think, Sharaad?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I watched all of Parliament Digital, but I think what distinguishes, because it's a slightly different format,
right.
This was perhaps a much more dynamic situation.
Do you think the comparisons were fair?
Yeah, of course. But I mean, again, you know, the issue really is, you know, here we have a parliament that's bipartisan. It's got an aisle with the government of the day, and it's got the opposing aisle. You know, it's a much more realistic view of how politics operates in the country, right? Parliament Digital was much more of an assembly of young people
talking about issues
their ideas.
and ideas.
So it doesn't quite compare to the contentious structures or the competing nature of parliamentary debates, as they said, in the real world, as it were.
But I think the frustrations with the conduct of some MPs in Parliament yesterday remains. I don't think it's unreasonable to expect decorum in Dewan Rakyat, even if you are, you know, you have competing ideas or competing views, or you disagree with the way, you know, the comments of a certain MP.
Yeah, indeed. In fact, you know, decorum is demanded, I think, of the standing order. So you can fall foul of the expected level of decorum. But again, it comes back to, you know, we talked about this yesterday, the tone that is set by the Speaker, because the Speaker of the House, Ad Haron, yesterday being much more agnostic about what happened. Today, he's saying after, you know, checking with the standing orders, the Hansard or whatever, he's decided, yes, in fact, an apology had to be made by the MP from Balik. So very interesting that somebody actually who has in fact commented on Parliament yesterday was agnostic, today taking a position.
Well, he had a night to think about it, so he probably thought about it overnight and came back the next day. At least he had some, you know, a time to make the amends. I have to say that.
Except that he should have been intervening at that point in time, and this is what is expected of the Speaker. He's not a commentator. He's supposed to manage the House as the proceedings evolve, right?
He's a referee.
Yeah, he's a referee.
He has to make the on-the-spot decisions,
I mean,
right?
imagine a football game if, you know, the referee took a day off or took the night
to review the footage, maybe
Absolutely.
so. But okay, let's see now. Rembau MP Kari Jamaluddin tweeting today saying that Barisan Nasional will work on improving the manner in which it approaches debates in Dewan Rakyat. He said we have to work on our debate culture in Parliament. I completely agree, Kari. And to quote him, he said, parliamentary debate has always been robust and we must distinguish between witty and acerbic repartee with racist, sexist, ageist statements. BN will be having internal discussions on how we can do better. I would love to be a fly on that wall, Sharaad.
Yes, so would I. The question, of course, is that, you know, it's not like one side of the aisle is completely to be blamed and the other side is blameless when it comes to demagoguery. We saw that in the last Parliament. In fact, under the Pakatan Harapan, there were members of the government benches who were also, in some way, quite shouty and voluble. Yeah, and so, you know, the thing, Melisa, at the end of the day is what the Parliament presents itself to the Rakyat, the people who voted it, people who pay. We pay for those men and women to sit in that Parliament. We pay them a huge amount of money, and we expect them to be working very hard for us to achieve solutions, especially during this time of the pandemic. So I think what young people saw was a lot of grandstanding and demagoguery and the kind of thing that doesn't actually produce anything. Their disappointment, absolutely legitimate. All
right, so let's move on to other news. In Dewan Rakyat today, Mahfuz Omar, Amanah MP of Pokok Sena, asked the Minister of Housing and Local Government, Zuraida Kamaruddin, about the status of the proposal for local government elections that was mooted during the Pakatan Harapan government. To which Zuraida replied that none of her former Pakatan colleagues had stood up for her when the then Prime Minister Dr. Mahathir Mohamad dismissed the viability of local government elections. She then assured Dewan Rakyat that a paper will be tabled to the cabinet by mid-next year. What do you think? Do you reckon we'll see it soon?
Yeah, well, okay, so there's a very interesting dynamic here. Zuraida is taking the platform or a plank in the Pakatan manifesto.
Yes, it was.
And keep holding on to it even as she moved out of the Pakatan, in fact, helped precipitate the end of the Pakatan Harapan government, perhaps in this recent comment, throwing Dr. Mahathir under the bus as well. And now she projects into the future the possibility of a paper being tabled or given to cabinet for decision. A year from now, when so much talk is about a snap election happening before the end of the year. So the big question is, what kind of legislative agenda can there possibly be when you have this level of uncertainty in politics?
Surely the discussion or the research and the dialogue and the engagement with stakeholders about the proposal for local government can happen regardless of when elections are to be held.
Sure. But, I think Teresa Kok of the DAP mentioned that while she had heard Zuraida make as a Pakatan Harapan MP, a cabinet minister rather, make statements about local government. She never saw a white paper. So there they were, 22 months, nothing happened. Now, another year before a paper is given to cabinet. Wonder what is actually happening. Is there real political will, or is this very much part of the kind of political capital that's gained by raising issues? You raise an issue, whether you follow through or not is a separate matter.
And it's about the follow through. So whether there's kind of follow up on that, whether we mark our calendars and come back and check whether there is a paper being presented to cabinet, but also whether there is engagement. So I think Teresa Kok brought up a really important point that there needs to be dialogue. So if this is going to happen, there needs to be engagement with stakeholders, there needs to be discussion and education. The last local elections happened so long ago that very few people can still remember what it was like to vote in those elections.
Yeah, there are, of course, there have been concerns, even during the Pakatan Harapan time, I think within that coalition, or Pakatan Rakyat period, I believe, when there were concerns about how those elections work out. So the question of the ethnic composition of cities, would it result in a multiracial and perhaps Chinese-based parties doing much better than, say, the Islamist party? So there has been pushback. It was, I understand, not an easy conversation to have. Nonetheless, Melisa, coming back to the question of this, going to cabinet next year, mid-next year, how much can a government, project into the future a legislative agenda if it's not following a set electoral cycle? If you don't have a sense of when you might be tossed out of government, what does it do to policy continuity? What does it do to policy formulation?
Definitely. Great questions there. We're going to mull that over and take a quick break. But in just a few minutes, we're going to be discussing the resumption of cross-border travel between Malaysia and Singapore. Stay tuned to Consider This. Hello, Ihsan. Hi.
Hi. Sharaad here. Can you you can't see me.
Quarantine di hospital ataupun di rumah.
Terdapat 86 rakyat Malaysia di Wuhan.
Sosioekonomi Bumiputera ini tidak boleh dipisahkan, tidak boleh dikurangkan ataupun ditinggalkan.
Pasal apa syarikat tu rugi? Kira sukses. The success is not necessary pada saya lah. Kalau kita nak menolong sesuatu.
Isra, apa benda Rancak TV ni?
Rancak TV ni adalah sebuah channel digital yang bernaung di bawah Astro AWANI.
Apa yang best sangat dengan Rancak TV ni?
Of course best, sebab dia ada macam-macam cerita. Dia ada cerita pasal isu-isu semasa, cerita pasal kesenian, cerita pasal hiburan, cerita pasal kecergasan, cerita pasal sukan, cerita pasal travel, cerita pasal sejarah, fakta-fakta menarik. Dan mereka juga ada buat short film dan juga dokumentari. Dan yang paling penting,
Hi, you're watching Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris Sharaad Kuttan. Melisa, Malaysia and Singapore have mutually agreed to open respective borders to long-term pass holders as well as business and official visitors starting the 10th of August. Now, the Causeway is one of the world's busiest border crossings, across which some 250,000 people use to traverse each day. Joining us on the show now to discuss the reopening of this border, we have Isan, fellow at the Singapore Institute of International Affairs. Good evening, Isan. Welcome to the show. Just to set the scene, can you talk to us a little bit about how disruptive the closure of this border has been for all stakeholders, including Malaysian workers and Singaporean employers?
Well, as we all know, Singapore obtained a lot of it, for example, fresh producers, as well as other perishable goods from Malaysia or to Malaysia. And a lot of Malaysians crossing the Causeway to work in Singapore and coming back on a daily basis. So when the coronavirus pandemic hit in a big way, and both countries essentially closed down their borders for extended periods of time, of course, number one, Malaysian workers' livelihood would be in trouble. Their Singaporean employers would be hard put to obtain human resources to fill up their places, and then of course various vital supplies in Singapore, even though there are various measures to ensure that most of these supplies still go into Singapore. Sometimes like drivers will not disembark from the lorries and so on. But of course, all these arrangements would have been much easier if we sort of at least partially open up the borders. Now that the pandemic has to a large extent anticipated, even though not gone away here.
Isan, a couple of months ago on this show, we talked to people in the F&B sector in Singapore and talked about the impact of the closure. Can you tell us a little more about where Malaysians are? We're talking about specifically Malaysian workers are in Singapore's economy, and to what extent Singaporean businesses are in fact located in Iskandar, in Johor.
Well, for example, you mentioned F&B business in Singapore. I have patronized some of these restaurants and so on in Singapore. And sometimes the Malaysian workers there would have to rush back to Malaysia after the shift and so on. So that would be possible right now because of the closure of the borders. By similar tokens, there are Malaysian workers on shift duty in Singapore's shipyard, in Singapore's Europe factories, and so on. Number one is their jobs, and number two is also Singapore's economic well-being. That's why both countries and our people are very anxious to have the borders reopened again.
Okay. So on that note of Singapore wanting to make sure that it's got economic viability, the supply chains are not affected. How has Singapore approached the opening up of borders? Because if I understand it, Singapore and China had a fast lane for business and official travel between the two countries back in June. So how is Singapore approaching opening up its borders again?
Well, I think Singapore and a number of other countries are adopting this so-called green bubble concept, when there is, for example, significant, usually municipal region in another country which is more or less quote-unquote clear of the coronavirus, then there will be fast lane arrangement between, for example, in this case, Singapore and that municipal region or areas. In this case, I think quite a few of them in China. So, of course, something like that could be contemplated between Singapore and Johor Bahru. If both governments feel that it is, as the Foreign Minister of Singapore, Vivian Balakrishnan said, safe to do so for both Singaporeans and Malaysians.
Isan, the question of how do you measure this is about bilateral discussions, obviously not transparent to the public, but in these bilateral discussions, two countries with perhaps different strategies dealing with the pandemic. How do you measure? Because we have perhaps more testing in Singapore than we have in Malaysia. How do you compare the death rates? How does each side reassure themselves and the other that they are on equal par? This is a safe thing to do.
Well, I think both governments, both authorities, both countries doing their best to try to contain the spread of the virus in their respective jurisdiction. If going by what went on over the last, let's say, 3 or 4 months, I think there's a lot of actually mutual trust between Singapore and Malaysia. We have not traded a single, unkind word about you are doing worse than us, or I'm doing better than you, and so on. In fact, I think there are a lot of exchanges of best practices and lessons between the medical communities of both countries. So this level of profound trust, as well as the general friendliness between the two governments, as well as, and I have to emphasize the eagerness of both the people and the business communities of both countries to have even just a limited amount of exchanges. I think we're all calling for borders to be at least slightly open here.
So can I touch on that for a little bit? You talked a little bit earlier about this being a partial opening. It could just be a limited amount of crossings, of cross-border travel, limited to certain businesses and official travel only. What does that mean for the economic dislocation of many Malaysian workers who have not been, who chose to remain in Malaysia, not been allowed back into Singapore? I'm wondering what this would mean for the daily cross-border commute for those living in Johor working in Singapore.
Well, if I learned about what has been disclosed so far, it would appear that, for example, Malaysian workers in Singapore, they will be able to undergo some tests in Singapore, and, for example, remain there for, let's say, 3 months, come back to Malaysia for family visits for a short period of time, and then after testing, going back to Singapore again. I'm sure the similar arrangement is made in the opposite direction as well. But you can see as I saw from various footages of the Malaysian and Singaporean foreign ministers who are about the same age and political experience, walk side by side. It appears that it's a very friendly and working relationship between the two governments to try to better the economy at this pandemic.
Isan, very quickly, does this whole pandemic and perhaps we don't get a vaccine in time, does it disrupt the whole growth triangle area, the idea of Singapore, Johor and Batam, long-standing growth triangle? Will it pull the rug from under this kind of economic planning for the future?
Well, the pandemic is pulling the rug from underneath almost everything else. You see a negative growth being forecast in both Malaysia and Singapore, for example. So I think number one, both countries have to resume gingerly their commercial links. After the pandemic, and then we involve Indonesia, or at least that part of Indonesia, whom we consider green bubbles and so on, and gradually build up our economy. Singapore, Malaysia, and the green part of Indonesia at least.
It's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. We're going to take a quick break in just a few minutes. We'll continue this conversation. Stay tuned to consider this. Meng, is that you?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Melisa.
I'm Sharaad.
Melisa and
Sharaad.
Sharaad.
Yes,
Sharaad like Gerard, but the nest. Sharaad.
Well, thank you so much, Meng, for doing this tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Consider this. Let's continue our conversation about the opening of a green lane for business travel between Malaysia and Singapore beginning 10th of August. Now, the arrangement will permit cross-border travel for essential business and official purposes only, and it remains subject to COVID-19 preventative guidelines. How are Singapore businesses receiving this news? Let's find out more from Meng, CEO of the Singapore Business Federation. Good evening, Meng. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this evening. Now, we read news today that Singapore's economy contracted 41.2% compared to the previous quarter. It was the biggest quarterly contraction on record. Now, help us understand what the on-the-ground impact of the COVID-19 border restrictions has been on Singaporean businesses.
Okay. The economic numbers at this moment coincided with our circuit breaker period, so it is to be expected. I think the following quarters could be slightly better, but we are nevertheless successful. Well, I can say that the businesses are affected by border restrictions, the COVID-19 border restrictions, at least three ways. The first is that our tourism industry, our aviation industry, and also our hospitality industry, they depend a lot on tourists. Singapore is so small, we don't have domestic tourism, very small, and 8 million tourists have been here. So obviously these sectors are badly affected, tourism, aviation, and hospitality. Then the next is that we have one-third of our workforce migrant workers. And over the period when the border restrictions were applied, it was also during Chinese New Year. I think many of the PRC workers were back in China for holidays, Chinese New Year, and they couldn't come back. So we had companies which have a shortage on PRC workers who could not return. And then also when Malaysia introduced your movement control order as well, we also have disruption of Malaysian workers who could not even daily commute, cannot daily commute into Singapore for work as well as some of our Singapore executives who have got operations plans in Johor, they could not go across. That restriction has also affected some of what we call our hub services, like for example, we have many regional headquarters in Singapore. They are looking after the Asia-Pacific region, looking after ASEAN. So these executives also could not travel to parts of Southeast Asia. So that also affected our hub services. So we saw this news today about the COVID lane arrangement with Malaysia. I think we welcome it, but we need to look at more details from both sides.
Speaking about these bilateral talks, to what extent do stakeholders like yourselves, representing the Federation, get involved? Have you made representations to both governments in terms of what you think is important, the timeline you would like to see put in place for either restoration or for some sort of partial restoration for the issue of workers in particular?
Yeah, certainly we have. We have fixed the regulations, and it's not as if the government doesn't know our needs in terms of opening borders. We have got we are strong trade and investment partners in many countries where there are existing border restrictions. So we make those representations, but of course those are business needs. We want not just essential business travel, but we want for more normal travel, even having tourism with each other. But there are risks because it is only now that many of the countries in part of the region are getting their COVID-19 under some form of control. So we understand that the government will have to balance between the needs of businesses opening to aggressively managing those restrictions. And we expect that because we do get infected again as a result of more important cases, and if the government locked down, that's also good for the businesses generally in Singapore as well.
Definitely. But if we were looking from the perspective of businesses, particularly in Singapore, when do you expect things to return to normal, or as normal as they can be? Because we have, from what we understand, this is only for essential business travel, yes?
Yeah, that's right. So I think there is no normal until such time that we have a vaccine, and then hopefully, I don't know, 1-2 years away, and we have the effective vaccine. So what we are now in a period whereby we need to be able to manage living with the virus in our midst, and that means having the capability to do contact tracing, to do testing, and then
how have Singaporean businesses managed with the restricted travel? You mentioned, the migrant workers, right? So from GRC, from Malaysia. How has Singaporean businesses managed with the lack of limited workers?
One is that they managed because it was during the period of the lockdown, so there were no business to begin with. So workers were not doing anything. So there was no demand. The construction industry, based on our numbers, 95% everything shut down. So that was really a really bad situation. But what we are doing now in Singapore is that now because of the recession, there are companies that are shedding workers. So there are, like for example, PRC workers who are no longer needed. So the government then says, all right, you have PRC workers that are no longer needed. Previously, the workers have to send back to China. Now, no, they say that you can actually redeploy that worker to another employer. So we are helping do that, and we have deployed about almost 1,000 over PRC workers from a company that has access to a company that is using PRC workers. So
very quickly, Meng, talk about Malaysian workers. It's a number in the hundreds of thousands. Are they, essentially, have they lost their jobs? And are the jobs not going to be returning to them in the foreseeable future?
Well, the construction industry, there's very much shut down. The construction industry is essentially not quite yet open. That's one. A lot of Malaysian workers are in the retail and F&B industry. In those industries, the turnover has been much reduced because of the circuit breaker. And now even after the circuit breaker, demand is very slow. People are hesitant to go to the shop, go out to dine. So I'm afraid that not just Malaysian workers, but Singaporean workers will begin to be retrenched from the retail industry, will be retrenched from the F&B industry. It's not going to just affect Malaysian workers. All workers in Singapore.
Meng, thank you so much for talking to us tonight. We really appreciate your time and sharing your insights. That's all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan, signing off for the evening.
Thank you so much for watching. Good night. Bye.